Hello, Dr. BA. Welcome to another reasonably spontaneous conversation.
Hi, Dennis. It's so good to be with you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Well, this is a subject, spirituality, and how we relate to this concept that we all have called God. Certainly in the West, that we have, most of us within our traditions. So I'm fascinated with how the concept of how it evolved over time. Now, when you were a child, when you were first introduced to God, how was this introduced to you?
That's an interesting question for me because my dad is a minister or was a minister. He's now gone.
Hmm.
And he was in seminary after college for 4 years. And I think part of that may have been when I was little. But the first time I can remember thinking about sort of religion per se is being taken to church,
Yes.
the church that he was affiliated with, and I always sort of connect it more with my dad than I do my mother. She never anticipated being a minister's wife, so
And
she
you were a preacher's kid.
I was a PK. I
Okay, and
absolutely
this is
was.
that comes with its own baggage as its own.
It can. It absolutely can. In my case, I think it was sort of good baggage. And that may have been because of the balance of my mother. I did
Mhm.
not, even though my dad pastored our church for 27 years, he was a Baptist minister in DC. I never got this really sort of really overwhelming sense of what I could and couldn't do as a PK. That I don't remember that sentence ever being said to me,
No.
because you're a minister's daughter, you don't do whatever. That just sort of wasn't how we rolled. Even though you would think, and I later learned in talking to people, for instance, that I went to high school with who were
Yes.
PKs, that they had a very different experience
Oh,
about that.
it's across the spectrum. So did you think of God as a being in the sky? Did you evolve? Was this something that you thought of in that? Because it was very confusing to me. I couldn't quite gather that in my mind as to what it
Yeah.
was. What was your sense of what this was? This
I don't know that
being.
I gave it an awful lot of thought because probably because I started hearing it so young, just being in church and going to Sunday school and listening to the stories and stuff like that. And that was not a hard concept for me.
Mhm.
It also was equally not difficult for me to realize I don't think this is as small as people think it is. I think this is a whole lot greater than organized religion would have us believe.
Ah,
And I sort of immediately, with that thought, it's not necessarily something you share with everyone because they sort of believe differently, but this is your walk. This feels right for you.
yes.
So I never had a whole bunch of cognitive dissonance about the role of religion as traditionally given to me. And I have to tell you, not only was my dad a minister, but my uncle, his father or his brother was a minister. My grandfather was a minister on my mother's side. My brother became a minister and now pastors his own church. And
Wow.
two of my three sisters are ministers. So our
Amazing.
conversations are kind
You
of
do you have
interesting
it.
because they do not, I'm not in their space about this.
Yes.
And they know it's really important to me. In fact, they have all said at some point, you are probably one of the most spiritual people I know. I mean, because for me, this isn't something I do on Sunday. It's a belief I have of what we're sent here for, who we're sent here by, what we're sent here to do. And every single moment, I am connecting with that to make sure I'm doing what I should be doing. And I've seen it play out time and time and time again in my life. In fact, Dennis, This weekend, I went to the 50th law school reunion for me in DC, and was tasked to give for the class of 2025 their charge. And I left on Saturday morning, and Sunday evening received a text from a number I did not know. And that's pretty unusual. And I opened it, which kind of is unusual because I don't usually do that, but something said open this. And it was from a classmate I had missed who came the day after I left. And he said that he had wanted to get in touch with me. He actually wanted to see me while I was there, but I left before he came. And he said, it blew me away. He said, I wanted to thank you in person because in our second year of law school, I had to leave in September, and I came back in December, and the dean allowed me to take my finals. And if I could do what I needed to do, then I would be able to get credit for that term. And you gave me your notes for commercial law. I was able to pass. I became the first elected attorney general, Black, in the state of Alabama. And I wanted to thank you. I have gotten a congressional thank you for what you did. Dennis, I couldn't swear to you I knew who it was before I looked at the picture, but I knew I did what I was guided to do in doing what I did that ended up being a part of him being not only an attorney, but a pathfinder who became the first one in Alabama. And as a sort of cherry on top, when I looked up my grandmother in the census for 1900, I found that she was living with her grandmother as well. Her grandmother was living in the house with her and her parents. And her grandmother was born in 1815, her grandmother was born in 1815 in Alabama, which I knew nothing about. So, of course, she was born into slavery, having been taken there once it was opened up under the Louisiana Purchase. So, and I cannot tell you how many times things like that have happened. So,
See, that's the thing about it. I mean, we think about the term coincidence. And if something happens over and over and over and over again, then that to me is more of a coincidence. I feel in my spirituality it's been proven to me. The thing that astonishes me is when I don't believe it. Because why if something, I mean, if gravity happens and then it happens this 1,000 times, why am I going to doubt that it's going to happen that 1,000th time? If
I
I've
love
been taken
that.
care of over and over and over and over again, where is that doubt? And that's what happens. There appears to me, in my experience of spirituality, however this works, however this amazing clock works, is that the universe is interactive, is that it actually responds to my own vector of how I'm doing. And it only has one answer. A teacher of mine, Jesse Jennings, would always say, the universe has only one answer to every question, and that's yes. Oh, life is so hard and everybody's so mean to me and all that. Yes.
Yes.
I'm able to make it through life. People are here to help me. They respond. Yes, there is a tendency. It isn't like a slot. It isn't a vending machine, but it's a tendency that will move in that direction.
I love that. I love that the universe only has one answer, and that's yes. Yes, I love that. And I think I like the idea of you saying it was interactive, because I believe that there are a zillion different ways. There you have total free will. And I believe that we're sent here with a task to do. We will be provided. We were given the tools we needed to do that. We will be provided with helpers along the way. And I cannot tell you how many times that has happened for me. And that The biggest chore we have is really to understand that and to work with it, as opposed to letting things get in the way that essentially become noise for us. And in leaning into that, most people feel too scared to do it
Mhm.
because they feel like they have to control every single part of what they do. It does not stop you from having control. What it does is it gives you, I am constantly hearing or feeling some sense of what I ought to be doing that I know isn't just connected to, the right or wrong that I learned in Sunday school. It's something more than that. It's something that says, give him your notes, even though you don't even know him that well. Trust that this is the thing to do.
Mhm.
That has happened so many times over my life, and it's paid off in ways, and this is a perfect example, in ways I may not ever know. If I wanted to keep control over that whole situation, I wouldn't have made the same choice, but I
No.
release it. It's like, this is what you feel to do. This is what you need to do, whether you ever see this or not again. That's not your business. You are doing the business of the universe. That's for them to figure out whether you will ever know this or not. Here we are, 52 years later. I find this out from just some act of kindness. In fact, that's what he said. You were always so kind. That's what everybody said. When I
Exactly.
was at the 50th reunion, everybody talked about how kind I was. And I believe that is a part of what I came here with, to be able to do what it is that I do. And for me, letting go of that control when control is really important to me, because I do have this sense of, I was sent here to do something, so I have to stay on
Sure.
track. Letting go of that is one of the lessons that I'm here to learn. That
Oh,
there,
and it's such a hard one, and
it is.
one of the things that I love about this, and in my life, what I've experienced is that I have control over my footwork. I do
Mhm.
not have control over the result.
Yes.
You have
Yes. And
control
that's
over
not
whether
your
or
business.
not you're going to be open and kind and giving, whether that comes as the result. And so we misperceive it, I think, to think that control means that I have to get an outcome that I'm looking
Mhm.
for, because we
Mhm.
don't know. We don't know what the outcomes, just like that outcome of you giving those notes. There's no
Mhm.
way that you could have done it, but you are participating in the entire milieu of the universe
Mhm.
by doing that,
Mhm.
and or by not doing it. And either way, there are going to be repercussions from whatever you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think living in the world with the ideas that we do, Dennis, means that it's almost like you're in a double reality, right? Because there's the one that you're taught from the time you're born about how
Yep.
you get along in the world. And then there's the one that you feel that is right for you. And people don't always understand why you may do a particular thing. Why would you give money to him? Why would you, help this person? Why would you
Yes.
not do whatever? To me, that's noise. And I had to learn to turn that noise off, because that was not my walk. They were dealing with a whole different set of beliefs. And that's
Exactly.
fine for them. That's just not my belief. And I'm not trying to press my belief on them. And
No.
I don't want to I don't want them to press theirs on me. But at the end of the day, when I lay my head down on my pillow at night, I have to feel like I did what I was supposed to do.
Yes.
And that is not to deal with what somebody else thought I should do. It is to deal with what I thought I should do. And I don't always even know why it is I'm supposed to do it. But that's where what you talked about
Yes.
comes in. And that's why I say that's not my business. I do what I'm guided to do, and how it works out is not for me. I'm just a vessel.
Yes.
It is for the universe to deal with in a way that they saw fit to do. So for instance, for the person that I gave the notes to, that person went off and became the first Black elected Attorney General of the state of Alabama.
Exactly.
And I never knew that. I never knew that my giving him those notes led to him being able to do that. And it's okay. I don't need to know that. I don't feel bigger because that happened.
No.
I feel so happy for him. I feel so happy for the state of Alabama finally in 1992 having him be who he was. But I don't have anything to do with that. I mean, he feels like I do. And I guess physically,
But
yeah.
you were, but we're, it's like if you're building a building, this is the 13th floor or the 14th floor. That is vital to get all the rest of the building that it's going up.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
I want to talk about forgiveness and dealing with challenges that we have, because we all have. You who are known as the mother of DEI during this entire process as it's going, an administration comes in and takes your life work and takes it out, says that it's not valid, completely. How do you deal with that in a spiritual way as you're handling something as profound as that is
Mhm.
such an essential part of your life?
Mhm.
I need to hear what
Mm.
is going on and what's happening with you.
What a great question. You are just so good. That is a wonderful question because it's such a profound change and one that we rarely have an experience of in our lifetime. For 43 years, I have been doing this. It came out of purely the law and what was happening with the law. So to see somebody, the chief executive of the country, come in and totally wipe it out and want to wipe it out in all of its iterations is just more than anything to me bizarre. And it originally I was sort of stuck, like, first of all, it's like, what's going on? Like, how far is this going? What is he doing? What's the point? What's the purpose? Where are we going with this? And I was sort of frozen for several weeks, kind of incommunicado, just letting the universe do what it does because I know how it deals with me. I know I was sent here for a purpose. I know that a big part of that purpose was this. And again, it's not my business what happens with it, but I want to do what it was I was sent here to do. Figuring out what that was, I knew was a task I had to do. And think about it. We're talking about the president of the United States of America.
Yeah.
You're going to go against him. You have something that you think you can challenge him on. And part of what I was sent here with was, I think, a sense of staying on task and being able to have tunnel vision with that task while still understanding the the world that I'm dealing with. So for
And your
me,
personal emotions, because you have your own emotions about this. You have your sense that you have to deal with. You have to deal with this precious life's work that you have that is
that wasn't a part of it for me, oddly enough. And I think that was a tool that I
what a
can't get
gift.
away with. It is a tool. This was always for me about what it did to protect employers. That was the biggest thing. And what DEI does to protect them. Now they've misused it, but that's because they got away from what it was that they were supposed to be doing in the
Sure.
first place. But it was also, as a part of that, along with that came sort of the social justice piece, what it does to move society forward to a place that's closer to where they said they want to be in their founding documents. Okay. And in that, it's a huge piece, but at the same time, I just have to do what I was sent here to do. So I was frozen for a while. And then it got to the point where something happened to trigger what I knew I needed to do. And what I knew I needed to do was I needed to write the history of this, because what we were dealing with was people being able to be persuaded about him doing what he was doing and being startled by it, but thinking it really is okay, because they did not know what it was.
Yes.
And I had simply never put that out there. Things have been written about it, but nobody had the same relationship to it that I did, because I created the first course that brought this to sort of the masses, in the sense that it was the first course in colleges of business that taught people who were going to go out into business how to protect themselves under Title VII. As a part of that, Dennis, DEI was a necessary thing to do, because what would happen is, it was one thing to tell somebody, the law now says that you can't discriminate on the basis of color, religion, race, all of that. It was another thing to move from 347 years of never having that to all of a sudden having that.
Yes.
What does that picture look like? Do we just take down the signs that say colored and white? Does this mean that we can't have them like say what they want to us anymore? Not be able to say that. I mean, it permeated every single aspect of life, period. Every aspect of it. How you dealt with people in public, how you dealt with them in private, what you paid them, what kind of jobs they had, how they could interact with you personally, whether they could testify in court against you. I mean, everything you can believe that we do, literally from cradle to grave, was impacted by it. And because this is my sweet middle daughter who's coming.
Hello.
Hello, Dennis.
Tardan.
Oh, what a lovely
Anna
gift.
Alexis.
Hello, what is your name?
And Alexis.
Hi, Annalisa. How are you? I'm Dennis.
is
So
Dennis
nice to join us on Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation. What a gift. Look at this.
She is a gift.
Oh, what a pleasure.
It's
Yeah.
wonderful to meet you, Dennis.
Thank you. Oh,
So, Dennis,
we were visited by an angel. Do you see how this happens?
and she will tell you that is absolutely true. But to be able to go from 300, and I understand this, from 347 years of the slavery plus the 100 years of, or plus the 99 years of Jim Crow, people just didn't know what to do. So, and it was 18 years before I came along and created that class. And at that point, nobody knew. I mean, rooms full of lawyers didn't know that there was this law. So how people were going to deal with that law was a real conundrum. And I saw that as soon as I started doing seminars. I'd seen it in class, but students want their grades and all of that.
It isn't, the old expression, when the rubber meets the road. It's one thing to have it in theory, but what are you going to do when you actually have to implement it in? And that was your whole process, right?
Yeah. And that's what DEI was about. It was about, we know there's this law, but I need to teach you how to handle that law. And in order to do that, and this I learned from them when we would do exercises and engage about it, they were operating with what's in their head. Sure. That is what would get them in trouble, right? So it was like, well, if that's the case, then we need to deal with you and what's in your head, let you know what's in your head and where it might run into trouble with Title VII, not to change your mind. That was such an important piece for me. This is not about changing your mind, telling you how to think about something. It is about letting you know that there may be something in your head from 9 to 5 that's going to get you in trouble. What you do after 5 o'clock, I don't care, because you're on your own at that point. This is America. You can think what you want to think. Yeah. But during your 9 to 5 hours, there may be some things that may be problematic, and we need to talk about what those are.
And that was all you were.
Yeah. You don't need to tell me what they are. Just know when we talk about it, I might need some work with that. Yeah. But because, Dennis, people, and let me give you an example of it, and it's one of my favorites. I was dealing in a workplace. I was dealing with about maybe 50 employees. It was a series of 12 sessions I was supposed to do. And I asked, we had done an exercise where people talked about what they had, sort of the messages they had taken in when they were growing up about different stuff under Title VII. And this guy got up to do his piece where, he volunteered. He was an older white gentleman, and we got to race, and he said he had not gotten any messages about race growing up. And he had said in his introduction that he was about to retire, and he talked about where he came from, and the place that he named was the place that was so awful during the civil rights era that MLK left and went to Alabama because it was just too violent where this guy came from. So it was kind of hard to imagine that he didn't have any kind of race stuff growing up when he had just told me, he was like living in the thick of it. So I said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Well, yeah, because we didn't allow Black people to live in our town. So I didn't get any messages about race." This is how insidious those messages were. They were such.
I have no.
Well, your reaction was the same as that of the people sitting in the room, those other 49 folks, right? So, and at first he couldn't understand what was going on. It was like, why is everybody laughing? And then he stopped and thought about what he said, and he realized it hit him what he had just said. So he stopped and he said, "I feel awful." He said, "I'm about to retire, and I know I have hurt so many Black people during my work time. And it was because of something I didn't even know was in my head." Now, to me, Dennis, that's very different than somebody who knows what's in their head and is bound and determined to keep it there, even between 9 and 5. Now,
Yeah.
I don't even have a problem with you doing that, except that if you work for me and what you have in your head is going to get me in trouble and I'm going to have to pay for it, you need to go find somewhere else to work.
Yeah.
Because I don't
Exactly.
care what you think. I just don't want to have to be held responsible for it financially and getting, not only get me in trouble financially, but also create the havoc that it can create by having those ideas and acting on them.
Now,
And that's two different things.
I have gotten you off into where I want to get on our next reasonably spontaneous conversation, because I want to talk about your book, and I want to know, do you meditate? Do you have time off by yourself? How do you recharge and reconnect? Because I find I'll get out into the world and I'll get into attempting to control, attempting to manage things, and I'll lose that, and then I need to return and try to get back. What is your process for reconnecting in your own life?
It took me a while to realize that was a process, that was what I was doing. But for me, it is quiet time. In fact, I was just reading a piece yesterday that was 4 different kinds of introverts, and it turns out I'm one of them, which is amazing considering my whole life has been about being with people. But
It
I
is.
am essentially an introvert. And when I'm with people, I love it and they feel me. There's just such an authenticity there because I do love them and care so much for them and want the best for them. But when I'm done, I need some downtime. I need to
Thank you.
refuel.
And people do not understand that introversion isn't how you show up. There are many people like you, Hollywood stars, that are out there, and but it's where do you recharge?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the
And
difference
for
between an
me,
introvert and an extrovert in that
yeah.
realm.
And for me, quilting does it, gardening does it, being with my kids does it. Looking at things like Murder, She Wrote on TV, those are just, I'm not gonna lie, those are just that Midsummer Murders. I can just have them on in the background. There's something about them that just sort of calms everything out for me and makes it so, especially if I'm quilting and connecting with my ancestors, that I refuel. It comes back. And it's never a downtime for me. I'm always actively, whether I realize it or not, taking in, I'm thinking about things, I'm processing stuff, I'm figuring out what to do, even though it's not a conscious sort of thing. And it'll seem like I might be just sitting there quilting. That's never what's happening.
No,
There's
there's a
always
whole
stuff going on.
I mean, it would be no different than if you had on the stove this wonderful stew but everything's coalescing and working and bubbling and blurbing and all that is happening, even though you don't see anything happening
Yeah,
there. That's what's happening in your recharge when you're quilting and all.
yeah.
I get it.
And that's why I say it took a while for me to realize that was what was going on. Because, I'm thinking, oh, I just want to quilt. And it's like, no, that's not really what's happening here.
It's holy work. It's you feeding that soul by
Yes.
doing that. And I love that, in connecting with knowing that the stitches that you're doing are the same stitches that your great grandmother would have been doing in the same way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. And they are also a huge piece of my journey for me spiritually, because, and I think I probably most felt them. I've felt them at different times. And the first time I can remember feeling it, I was 12 years old. I was in the library. I was looking for a book to take with me, and it was a book of poetry. And I came across a piece that was in dialect, and Paul Laurence Dunbar's In the Morning. And I didn't understand why I couldn't understand the piece, but I couldn't understand it. And it's like, I can read English. Why can't I understand what this was saying? And finally, I realized this is my grandparents talking. Oh my God. Like, and I was such a bibliophile, even at 12 years old, that seeing it in a book made it like, oh my God, this is just so special. These weren't just like old country people who, I would probably be embarrassed to have show up at an event because they sounded like this. This was like a thing. These were real people, and somebody put it in a book. And that feeling of being connected to them has never left. And in fact, when I sat down to write the first edition of my employment law textbook. Now, remember, nobody's ever done this before. I've now been teaching this for probably 10 years by the time I started writing the book. And I just could feel their presence. And their presence said, thank you. Thank you for doing this. It was like a full circle moment. And later, probably about 3 or 4 years later, I happened to be at a therapist's office, and he was trying to explain something. And it wasn't for me. I was there with someone else. And he finally turns around and he says, can I say something to you? And I said, yeah. And he said, I just want you to know, I don't know how to tell you this. I don't know what to say, but this room is full of spirits. And you may have seen me doing like this, like getting flies out of my face. And I actually had, and me and the other person had kind of looked at each other like, what's this about? Because we don't see any flies. He said, I'm trying to move them out of my face because they won't leave me alone. He said, I don't hear spirits. I don't see spirits. I've never had this happen before, but they want me to tell you they are so glad you were here. They are just ecstatic that you were here.
Love it.
And I'm like,
This
what
is
am I supposed to do with that? I don't know what to say. He said, me either. I've never seen it. He said, I'm a man of science. I don't know anything about this. I'm just telling you what is happening right now.
and
And
what I
part of me
love
was
it
like, okay, it was like an affirmation.
exactly. And it feels to me that whatever it is, this concept of the universe, but it speaks to each one of us individually. I don't
Yes.
know that there is I
Yes.
don't know that so, and that's where I can't compare. I mean, I can go to a spiritual service and I can feel some communion with other people who are there. But it is my deep sense that I have to have that individual personal no one else would have it. So therefore, as many beings as there are the different ways that we're relating. And that way I
Yes.
don't have to get into comparisons. I don't have to say, well,
Yes. Yes.
you're or I'm less than, or you're more than, or
Yes.
whatever. It isn't. It is my own personal way of
Yes.
doing it.
And Dennis, the thing I think is most special about that is that it is designed absolutely for no one but you, so that you get it. Nobody else has to understand. It is a wavelength specifically for you. So, for instance, even doing something like writing, having them come to me when I write, or a lot of the times the moves that I make that have brought me to this point have
Yes.
been purely because of speaking a language that was absolutely geared to me. What happened may not mean anything to anybody else, but for me, they knew that was exactly what I needed to be able to hear them, to march in the direction they wanted me to march in. And that's what happened. It is amazing to me. And it's one of the reasons why I think it can be difficult for people who are truly attuned to that, because it's not what everyone else is doing or
No.
understands. And you have to come to the understanding that they don't have to understand it. This is your walk. This is your journey. It is specifically geared for you.
Thank you, Dr. BA, for another in a line. I feel like our conversations are quilting patches, and we're making a quilt. Whatever
I love
each one,
that.
so we're sewing them together, and each one has its own pattern. Each one has, and then we're sitting. You're teaching me how to do and how to put these together as we're going. So that's the metaphor that I want to use as you and I continue to get a chance to get to know each other, and we get a chance to explore heart to heart, mind to mind as to what we're doing here on the planet.
Yeah, I love that. Dennis, you are so special. I
Thank
love it that you have that thought process about it.
All right. Thank you, Dr. BA. And thank you,
All right.
everybody, for coming to seeing us on another reasonably spontaneous conversation. We'll see everybody next time.